Welcome. This is an introduction to the Virtual Therapeutic Breathwork Practicum, and I'm Jim Morningstar, the creator of Therapeutic Breathwork and director of the Transformational Breathwork Training Program. I'm so pleased to introduce the Virtual Breathwork Practicum and my co-host, Laura Weber.
Thank you, Jim. I am Laura Weber. I will be conducting all of the live calls in the Virtual Breathwork Practicum, January through beginning of August. And I am a relational coach. I have over 2,000 coaching hours, as well as doing coaching and breathwork training and supervision. I'm trained in holistic, somatic based coaching, trauma informed coaching, and specialize at the intersection of trauma, relationships, and sexuality. I am certified in all sorts of things, including movement for trauma and Reiki. And I'm part of this wonderful breathwork training program. And so excited that I found Jim as a teacher and mentor, and that I get to work with him in bringing this work more and more into the world.
Thank you, Laura. Likewise, I'm very glad of the skills set that you brought in, not only for working with people, working with breath, but also working in the virtual world
Mhm.
and how to make essential connection real, even through our computers. Because I've been doing breath work since the early 1970s, originally trained as a clinical psychologist, but dissatisfied with the medium of simply talking to people in a room and not involving the whole person.
Mhm.
It was not until I found the kind of body mind therapy that spoke to me and to my heart that I knew I had found a path with which I wanted to work with people. And it started out even before formal breath work, working with bioenergetics and Alexander Lowen's detailed study of the first 6 years of human life and how the themes that get involved in the person's character get translated into their body and into their breathing patterns.
Mhm.
This becomes a lifelong signature of the way they relate to the world. But it can be changed to the degree that these patterns are limiting and keeping us from fulfilling our full potential. We have found ways to rewrite some of that early neurological training that's held in place by fear.
Mhm.
Breathwork has, for me, been the mainstay in my work with consciousness raising and trauma recovery. It gives me tools to address the individual where they're at, meaning not where I think they should be, but exactly where their body is telling me their holding patterns are,
Mhm.
and how we can get to those holding patterns and unravel the physical, emotional, and psychological correlates that have held them in place. In fact, held them in bondage to childhood patterns and ways of relating to the world that keep their spirit confined.
Mhm.
So I began doing breath work for myself personally in the early 1970s, studying with Leonard Orr and many of the originators of modern day breath work. Added to this, we began later to look at all of the techniques of breath work that have been used in China and Tibet and India for thousands of years. And in the last 30 years, we have blended the techniques that have worked from time immemorial with the new discoveries we've made about trauma and trauma-informed personal growth. This now has led to a proliferation of many schools and teachers of breathwork. I saw the tremendous power that was there, but also the need for standardized training that help people not have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, continuously in terms of teaching breathwork to themselves and to others. Also, to find the ethical principles which would allow us to use this powerful a technique and to support one another when it looked like we weren't getting the kind of results that we wanted, or we were going off track ourselves with our own limited thinking or fearful patterns. So community has evolved that has created now safety for more and more people who are seeing the potential of change in their lives and coming to us for breathwork. But the only true breathwork training has to start inside. We have to go down those paths of our own holding patterns and fears, learning how our breathing is our 24/7 biofeedback mechanism that tells us when all of a sudden I'm holding and that I've been triggered in some ways that I've learned to ignore or try to get beyond. But when I come back to and I can take a breath and let go, I'm much more resourceful. I'm not then repeating old relationship patterns, old patterns of self-doubt. I, in essence, become connected with my source. And this is why, as a breath worker, we integrate breath work into our own daily practices. We have an entire program set up to help people learn the basics of breath work all the way up to becoming professional facilitators. The Breathwork Practicum is a key part of this training. I call it an apprenticeship to the spirit of breath. An apprenticeship in any art form means we're not just learning from books now, we're learning from practice. And we're learning with a mentor that can support us to perfect our practice. This is the beauty of the 6-month program that Laura has crafted to give the step-by-step training in reading your own body, in practicing the breathwork techniques with cohorts, and then taking it out into working with clients and getting supervision. At the end of the practicum, people are not in a position that they think they can do breath work. They are in a position to know they have done it. They have embodied it. And Laura will tell you about some of the ways that she has been drawn to breath work and how she has put it into this practicum.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. For me, breathwork is free. My breath is free and it is always available. And having done previously in my mid 20s yoga teacher training and learning a lot about pranayama and different styles of breathing that were always really supportive to me and I continue to use, learning the conscious connected breath. What people generally think of nowadays when they hear breath work, the faster than normal open mouth circular breath, and that's one version of breathwork. It's not the only version. And that's part of why I so resonate, Jim, with you and this school, that there are other ways. But this form of breathing, this really circular, conscious form of breathing, brought a level of stress and trauma healing, stress reduction and trauma healing in my own body that at least up until now I had not experienced, even with all the many tools that I had and all the trainings that I had done and all of the therapy and the counseling and the body work and the cranial sacral and all of these different modalities, which actually Jim, I think it was last week, was commenting on how our practitioners before are preparing us for who comes next, and our current practitioners preparing us for who's next. Um, so all of those modalities supported me in different ways. And with that said, when I was ready, I found breathwork and I found Jim as a teacher that allowed me to go so much deeper. And I feel really passionate about this practice because once people understand it in their own bodies, understand how to hold themselves and be with the power of breath to find the breath that is right for them, that is profoundly empowering. It's profoundly empowering. And it's something that is so easy. And I'm saying easy from a place of like logistics and cost to share. And it's something that is readily available wherever you are. So if I feel some panic or activation in the grocery store, I can use my breath right then and there. And I don't have to have any tools on me, and I don't have to look really silly or lie down. There are so many ways that I can use this to really support myself. And so I feel really passionate around passing this on, but also passing it on in a non-formulaic way. There are a lot of different approaches to breath work, and some approaches are very appropriate for certain people. And if you're watching this and this resonates for you, great. That's why we have different schools. But there are some approaches that, it's like this is how you do breath work: step one, step two, step three. Therapeutic breath work is far more customized, and the approach is really to allow you to find your inner breath worker, both for yourself and for the clients you may work with or the people that you may share this with at some stage. And that personally, for me, is incredibly empowering and so delightful because it also invites all the other gifts and trainings and things that I've done to bring that in and to use that, and that's really celebrated and encouraged within this particular school. And so those are some of the reasons that I'm super excited about not just breathwork itself, but this particular method of breathwork, and why I am conducting now, this will be the second round of this virtual breathwork practicum. And how this will work, the way we'll kind of break down this big topic of breathwork is through 6 different modules. There'll be a module each month. So you will receive materials in advance of our live calls that you'll complete on your own, and that'll be in the module in the learning platform. And each month we'll have a different topic. So the first month is we're working with what is breath work? Like, what are we actually talking about here? The second module, month 2, is the anatomy of a session. What are we looking for in terms of cues in beginning, middle, and end of breathwork with ourselves, with someone else? The third module, we're working with reconditioning and resistance. So how do we repattern some of these beliefs and ways of beings that no longer serve, while also working with and honoring the resistance that shows up, the fear, the mechanisms that were really important at one time in our lives. Module 4 works with ethics and synchronicities. And I have to say, studying with Jim is the most fun I've ever had with the topic of ethics. And I personally just love, love, love synchronicities and find that all over my practice. So that's a super juicy month. And then we move into Module 5, Metaphysical and Physical Aspects of Breathwork. And this is where, as Jim was introducing earlier, his work with Alexander Lowen and these themes that we develop in those first 6 developmental years can show up in the body. So that's what we're talking about in terms of physical aspects. And in understanding, even at a really basic or foundational level, about these aspects is highly supportive in knowing how to work with the client that is in front of you. What kind of breath might really support them in finding the breath that's right for them. in working through what's there in the present moment. And then finally, in our last module, we're working with the topic of completion. So of course, it's completion of the course itself, but it's also what is completion of a breathwork session? What is completion of a set of breathwork sessions? What does completion with a client look like? What is physical and metaphysical completion? So those are the modules that we'll be working through, a lot of really interesting material. And the way that it works each month is, as I shared, you'll have the advanced preparation materials. So those will be online delivered to you. You'll receive an email 2 weeks in advance to let you know that the module is open on the learning platform online. And then our first live call will explore the content in that advanced preparation. So the advanced preparation has the audios from Jim. So in this practicum, in a sense, you have two mentors. You have me and you have Jim because he's there via the audios, and then we will work with that material even deeper in the live class, Q&As, experiential exercises together, as well as doing student reports. So each student in the practicum will share a report on a breathwork session that they held as a facilitator usually, and we get to talk about it. So think about this as case studies and how helpful that is as a format to learn. It's always something that I get a lot out of and learn so much in hearing about other people's experiences and the unique things that can happen in breathwork. Our second call each month is focused on a breathwork exchange. So those are structured in two different ways. Some months we will do duos. So you will be in the role of facilitator of breathwork and receiver of breathwork with a partner. And some months will be in trios. And the roles there are facilitator, receiver, and observer. And you'll cycle through these different roles and we'll come back together and share our learnings, integrate together what that was like, what we learned, what we discovered, what we saw, the questions we had. And so that's kind of the general format of how this practicum works.
Thank you, Laura. As you mentioned, the first module deals with what is breath work. And we're talking about the breath as it affects the physical body. We're talking about the chemistry of breath. We're talking about the physiology of breath, what makes a healthy, complete breath on the physical level for an individual. We're talking about the breath in the emotional body.
Mm-hmm.
So how does breath affect our feeling states? And what can we do to help modulate and learn from our feeling states rather than feeling the victim of them?
Mm-hmm.
Breath also affects how we think. And the thought patterns that seem quite normal to us may not be the ones that serve us the best.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of working with group and working with community, is that we get feedback, not criticism, but feedback, which gives us alternatives which we practice with each other, and then we take into our family and into our community and work with our clients.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The spirit is also an important level that we're working with in breath work. And this is not any particular religious persuasion, but it is a recognition that we are more than just a collection of molecules or energy patterns, that there's a core within us that is the essence of our life. And this also can have wounding that keeps us in a place of suppression and self-denial. Breath work takes us out of our mind and helps us experience more of the truth of who we are outside of our thought patterns, outside of the
Mm-hmm.
cultural and familial dictates that have told us who we are, who we should work for. The freedom that comes from truly experiencing who you are rather than being told who you are is life affirming and life changing. There have been so many people who have altered the course of their life through doing this work, not because they're following a particular leader or a particular dogma,
Mm-hmm.
but they have found their own path.
Yeah.
And they have the freedom to explore and make mistakes, but
Mm-hmm.
learn the tools then to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
I consider the therapeutic breathwork process one more of learning a set of tools and how to use them rather than a set of answers. Answers tend to stop people. Then they think they know who they are and what their path is, and in a way block the organic process that life provides us of newness every day. We take the fear out of that by knowing that we come back to our own heart and our own source for guidance. That is something that can't be taken from you once it is embodied, once it is owned. That is yours forever. For me, the greatest joy in my life is being able to share that with others. I've called it the greatest job in the world, to see people when they give birth to themselves, when they awaken to that grace and that power within them. This is not something that happens every day and every minute, but the more we inculcate a practice of honoring our breath and listening, the more frequently it happens, and the more we live in that state of grace and freedom. So we invite you to come and experiment, not to believe or to buy or to do everything, but to experiment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Find out what works for you and what doesn't. And as Laura said earlier, this is not about letting an old life behind. No, this is about using the skills, the tools, the insights, the intelligence, the lovability that you already have and building on it.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
fact, being able to discriminate more what is going to serve you to blossom and what is now time to let go of. The program will be starting in the first of the year. And if you would like to come back and learn more, we have several introductory sessions, and you can even invite others to join in the introductory sessions before the course begins. I look forward to seeing and experimenting and enjoying the process of learning and growing together.